All right, welcome. How's everybody doing? Good to see you guys.
Good.
We're excited to have Sharon here today to share with us about the story of her manual that she's created. And I know some of you have been able to grab that. Before we move into that, we'll just do a few announcements. And if anyone else has announcements, please feel free to share. But I'm just going to get to our website. We have quite a few events coming up, so I just wanted to share that. We did schedule a new Seen Through Story workshop, and in August 25th through 26th. So when you go to events, you can see it. And we had such a good time at our one we just had in March, and excited to do this one. So this next one, August 25th and 26th, is scheduled so it fits for the Americas and Europe, South Africa time zones. So for those of you in
Yay.
Australia, not
Good
so
job.
much unless you stay up in the middle of the night. So, but again, we'll keep staggering that around so it can meet everybody's needs. But we're excited about that. We have our first ever Seen Through Dogs training retreat coming up in July. And of course, Virginia's coming up in just a couple weeks. For those of you who can make it to that one, a Seen Through Horses training retreat, and then one in California, and then our big gathering. So we'd love to see any of you guys who can make it to our gatherings. We have our Netherlands coming up. And this is just where we're just sharing a lot of different topics, and we're not just sharing, we're experiencing it. So the idea is we teach each other things of our experiences and our backgrounds, and then we do something experiential. And of course, we're in an environment with horses, with nature, art, whatever kind of is coming up. It's just a time for us to connect and gather and be with one another and support each other and learn through experiencing. So that's all some things coming up. And I think I'll just stop there. Is there anything else? I was going to log in and show one more thing. But while I'm logging in, is there anything else kind of coming up for anybody before we move in?
Did you want to mention the campaign that's coming up in May, or are you going to send something out? Just the Horses for Mental Health campaign.
Yeah, we're gearing up for the Horses for Mental Health campaign. Thanks, Lynn. And really excited for that. Mental Health Awareness Month, May 1st through 31st. So we've gotten our charity partners for that. So that's already set, but we'd love everybody to be involved with it as much as you can who incorporate horses or believe in, passionate about incorporating horses. We'll have some more new videos. We'll have all sorts of social media posts and activity. We have the 65 charity partners that we'd love for all of us to support one another and donate or support the cause, just to get the word out there, amplify our voice of how
Lynn,
horses can help mental health. Yeah.
what was the date for that? May
1st through 31st.
Oh, all of May then.
Yeah, we're going to do it for a month this time. We felt like
Okay.
1 week we tried to cram too much in. So we're going to spread it out and see how that goes.
Okay, if you can send me some information on that, I can maybe pick that up from Karen.
Okay, sure. Yeah, we'll
For
connect
Karen.
after. Yeah, absolutely. Sending our thoughts
Okay,
to
thank
Karen,
you.
who's sick right now. And thanks. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, I wanted to show you guys, just been some questions about if you want to get the certification with Arch. It's the Arch professional designation. You go to courses for that and you just click on that. And it's not technically a course. It's just the way for our platform. It's just a good place to put it. So it just gives information. But the key with this is there's actual buttons that you click. I'm just going to go to where it says applications for the Arch professional designation. You actually need to click these buttons and it takes you to a form to fill out. So it's not just completing this course. This course is really just so you click the button and you click the button and it takes you to the application. So, okay. And I'm excited. We're having some things coming up, including our member directory that you can access inside as members. We're going to add where you can look each other up by geography so we can find each other easily, who's by us. And then we're starting a public directory on our public pages. This will be for those of you who do have the certification with the Arch professional designation. You'll be able to list your programs and we'll have a public directory so people can find Arch facilitators in their areas. So that will hopefully, okay, I should knock on wood. You know, they said 2 to 3 weeks, but I'm knock on wood. Okay, it's technology. So, all right. I don't know if Mars is doing something or Mercury or whatever happens in the in the air. So add extra time for that. So anything else? Then you guys, so excited. Sharon, you have electricity, you have internet, knock on wood again, that's going to last. Thank you so much for joining us and all you do. And love to have you share your story about the manual. And if you want me to share my screen with anything, Sharon, let me know about the manual. So.
Okay. Well, let me say hi to everybody and thank you for joining Arch and coming on these community calls, which is amazing. And I feel humbled and privileged to share my surviving to thriving story with you. Lynn, maybe if you could just put the front cover up. How does that sound of the manual? So while Lynn finds that, so this is my favorite horse. I'm not supposed to have favorites, but that's who he is. He's been very important to me in my journey. So I'm thinking where to start with my story about the surviving to thriving story. So I'm not sure if many of you know, but in my madness, I decided to enroll to do a PhD in psychology. And I thought it was a good idea at the time. I have asked my family and friends if I have any more good ideas to give me a reality check, because this has been quite a challenge. But so I started basically in 2019. And those of you who have been part of a broader journey of horses in therapy and will know that I wrote a manual called Locus Equus. And somewhere once we started with Arch and we were discussing, how do we set up programs? What does it look like? How do we support our members? Lynn and I had a conversation and she said, why don't you take Locus Equus and rewrite it from the Arch perspective? So I thought, oh, that would be wonderful. That's a really good idea. Let me do that. And then COVID hit. And then I was thinking, it's so boring to redo what I already did. And anyway, I have this penchant for doing things the difficult way. So why not write a new manual and start out from the beginning? And I'd also been grappling with the literature and the theory around what supports Arch. So I was like, well, let me start with a new perspective. So I'd started my PhD journey thinking, I'll use a theoretical framework of positive psychology. That fits the closest to what I'm allowed to use in my university to logotherapy, which that's kind of where I fit. That's where my worldview is and my understanding of people. And then I started on the Arch journey, looking at all of the different literature. And I was like, no, positive psychology doesn't really do it for me. It's missing like really important elements of our existential challenges, like I always have to do things a difficult way. Life's difficult. Life is hard. Why do you want to choose an easy route? You've got to find meaning and purpose in what we do. And so I came across the existential positive psychology and the work of Paul Wong. And he's also emanates from logotherapy and really resonated with me. The more we started looking into Arch, what are we doing? We're working with nature. It's not just horses. We can bring in animals. I've been in my sessions. We've brought in grasshoppers. We've dealt with butterflies. We've dealt with different colored leaves. We've dealt with cheeky sheep who come running up and put their heads on you a little bit harder than you anticipate. And I was like, what are we doing? So I started to look a bit further and came across eco-psychology. And it's like, yes, we are integrating the non-human world into our human world, and started to explore that further and becoming more and more aware of how easy we have become separated from our roots as part of nature. And so I thought, okay, let me see if I can integrate that. The more I looked at that, I came across a theoretical framework called eco-existential positive psychology. And essentially, in the manual, I've given a bit of an overview of what that is and how we get there. But really, what does it say? What does eco-existential positive psychology say? It says that we are part of nature, and that through our connections with nature, that we can be well, that we can flourish, and that we can face our existential anxieties, and we can meet our existential needs. So that's kind of where it's got a backstory to where I began. And then I have a wonderful team of friends who help with facilitation. And I said to them, they were all ready to do Logos Equus. And I said, hey, I got this new idea. What do you think? And like always, they say yes to life, because that's what we do, is we say yes to life. That's what art is about. We say yes to life. Look where we are now. We've got seen through nature, seen through horses, seen through dogs, and maybe we can have seen through farm animals at some point, because that's another experience that I've been working with. And so we started, really where we started was, if we look what from an existential perspective and from an existential positive psychology perspective, okay, there's really 3 questions that we are always asking in terms of our existence. Or not 3, 6 questions. I must double that. 6 questions, okay? The first is, who am I? We're always grappling with issues of identity. Who am I? How can I be happy? Happiness. Happiness, how can I flourish? Okay, what should I do with my life? All right, that's another thing that we are always grappling with. All right, how do I make the right choices? Where do I belong? And what is the point of striving when life is so short? Like, how do I find, how do I face death? What am I, with this existential anxiety? Yeah, Lynn, it's on page 7, I think. Yeah. Okay. And resolving all of these questions is important for us to flourish and for us to feel that life is meaningful and that we have hope for the future. And so what is the topic of my PhD research is about what's the role of a horse-human intervention in flourishing, meaning, and hope. And I'm working I work in a very poor community, which is very underserviced. So really, with my focus is on adults who live in that community. So I use these 6 questions around to develop the manual, and trying to keep a story mindset. And how do we do this without being too prescriptive? That's something even today, even putting it in a manual and making it available for use. I think Lynn, you and I know Amanda's not in the call, we had some conversations about that, about, how do we're going to put something down. Once you put it down, it almost feels like it's rigid and inflexible, but it's a starting point. And so any of you have the manual, I'm grateful to you that you have, that you've bought it and you're curious about it, but to know that it's flexible and how to use this. So when we started, I started with a review group of, we had a group of 5 people. And so we were 5 participants and 4 facilitators. And we started with the manual. And we just went through the sessions one by one, and we to try to work out, like, what is the flow? What's the right flow? So Lynn, I don't know if you can find the page. I think it's it's the session numbers. It's just an overview of like the agenda of what session 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's after that. So we really kind of worked, there it is, yeah. So we kind of really worked with this, and we were like, so trying to hold, these are the existential questions that we're grappling with. Where do you start? Where's the good flow? So it's really that same story about, okay, what is our story premise here? Where are we starting? What is the arch that we want to go through? And so the story premise really is about how do we go on this journey through an arch to find flourishing, meaning, and hope, and grow in that journey. And so we started off with the idea of, right, we want to get to know, when we want to in a story, we always want to know who are the characters, who's present, you know, so a little bit of information about their relationships to one another. So that's why I started with the idea of getting to know the story. And then we were deciding, it was like, well, where do we go next? And so I always kind of try to simplify things, my very complicated approach to life. And that's like, okay, I need to get to know who I am. When I know who I am, then I need to get to know who I am in respect of you, and who you are in respect of me. So it's me and you. And then it's me and you and the broader world. So I tried to think, how do I do that? And then I was trying to think, well, that doesn't really fit so well with this story. So how's that going to work? So then we thought, okay, well, I need to get to know me, because that's what's important. That's what this is about. We're grappling with existential issues, and existential issues about me and who am I in this world that is challenging and always changing and always uncertain. So we started out with getting to know the story, and then we thought, okay, then we should get to know who we are as a unique person. And then it was like, okay, then we need to know about our emotions. And then we need to look at, okay, how can we be connected to others? Then it's, oh, well, maybe somewhere in here, values are important. So maybe we should put values in there. And then we looked at meaning in life, and then celebrating a life worth living. And that's where we started. But as we went through it with the group, we realized that the flow was wrong, that the way that the chapters were working and that the story was moving was that the flow was wrong. And so we were so that was with the first group, where we tried to kind of stick with that. When we did the second group, we were a little bit more open. We're like, okay, we've got these session guides. We're just going to go with what fits with the story, and let's meet the needs of our clients. And so we eventually came to this format that you have now, where it's getting to know the story. And then it's like, okay, I want to understand my emotions. What are my emotions? You know, how do they serve me? How do they function? I don't know about from my reading, it seems like it's all over the world. It's cross-culturally that we don't learn about emotions. We're not aware of how they serve us. And we spend a lot of time and effort trying to suppress them, or trying to not experience them, especially the uncomfortable ones. And in our South African culture, which is very patriarchal, it's very strong, strong method, or strong message rather, suppress those emotions. Don't be emotional, be sensible. And so then that seemed to really, from the feedback from our participants, that was really fitted to bring it earlier. And then we realized that values are so important. We always speak about our rights and understanding our rights. Less so are we aware that on the flip side of our rights is our responsibilities, that actually values that inform us in terms of the decisions we make. And they basically inform us even in terms of understanding our rights. So we moved values up a bit earlier. And then we worked you've got to put all of that together into understanding our uniqueness. And then how do we feel good even though life's difficult? And then, okay, it's being connected to others and being connected to something, that sense of something that's greater than us. And that's where nature is so amazing, because we just have to be in nature to become aware how, how in awe we are of nature, and that amazing sense that we are connected to something that's so much bigger than us. And that can make us feel quite small. And yet at the same time, in that feeling of restriction, there's also a sense of freedom in this amazing, unique, diverse expanse that's the universe. And then, of course, meaning and purpose is integral to flourishing and integral to hope. And then we finish off with celebrating that our life is worth living. So I'm going to pause here, because I would love if we could have a little bit of an organic conversation, if there's some questions, and just give people a moment to breathe, pause. Let's see where we go from to the next before I move on.
Sharon, I love the values being a part of it, and I'm wondering if you have identifying our own values can be complicated, and I'm wondering if you have a way that you bring out the value discussion.
Yeah, so Ola, I'm going to answer your question in a little bit of a roundabout way, if that's okay. And if I don't answer it properly, fully, then please bring me back to it.
Okay.
So yeah, values is something that we are often, as you say, we're completely unaware of. And yet at the same time, we're expected to know what they are. So I found a method, or I found a set of questions to help us to identify our values. And so, Lynn, if you want to go to the manual, it will be in session 3, I think. So while Lynn finds it, I'll just share with you how I set it up. Is that we set up the manual so that it's got, there's psychoeducation in there. And so that's really so that you don't have to go and look for any resources for your psychoeducation. At no level is it ever anticipated that you're going to share all of this. I mean, it's just a lot of information, but what's relevant, you would to share. And so I found this process, and what we did is we experimented with it in terms of how do we integrate it with the horses and integrate it with nature, rather than just making it a cognitive experience that you could do anywhere. So so what we did is that we asked we out in the arena, and I actually work in a field now in the paddock, but so that there are many more characters. So we asked the participants to identify a character that reminds them of themselves, okay, and who they want to develop the story of values with, okay. And then from there, so we let them go and identify that, okay. Then we ask them to record a physical object or an item that they feel they need to function with them on a daily basis, okay? So what we do is that we actually, I think I've left out something, Ulla, and in the answer, is we give everybody cards. So we give them a set of 20 cards, because we're going to work through we kind of work through 5 areas, okay? So in the first set of, and we give them, so there'll be 5 different colored cards. So there are 5 sets of 4 cards, and each set of 4 cards is a different color. I don't know if that's clear. And then we work through the questions, and we'll say, so we'll start with the first color, and then we will, I'm just trying to pull up it here, so I've got it in my Yeah, so we pull up on the cards, okay? So we ask them on the first set of cards to write down the physical objects or products or items that they feel they need to function on a daily basis, okay? So it could be anything. And they've got 4 cards. They can put a different one on each card. If they want to use the 4 cards, they can. If they don't have to, all right? There's no prescription, but there's so there's 4 cards. Then we ask them to do this while they are standing with the horse or the character that they are with. And depending on the group, we either ask them to imagine that they're answering this question for this character that they've identified, or they can do it for themselves. And it depends on the group. Yeah, you kind of have to feel it. For some groups, it works better. Okay, this is the character. Now we're going to imagine who this character, what does this character need on a daily basis to help them to function? Let's identify 4 things, okay? Then we take the next color of paper and we ask them to write down what are the important geographical locations, places, spaces to them, all right? And you might see there's a resonance here with us with our told, all right? So where are these important spaces, okay? Then we talk about, okay, then they give them time to do that, and then write down on the next color the people who have made them who they are today, okay? And these can be people who have contributed in a positive way or in a negative way to them, okay? Or people who've had a mixed experience in terms of the impact. And then we ask them to talk about their goals, some of their goals. What are their personal, professional goals? And they can be short-term or long-term goals, but to identify 4 of those. And thereafter, then we come to the next set of cards and we ask them to write down 4 significant memories that they always want to remember. Okay. And these can be memories that, where that person learned a valuable lesson. We don't dictate, but sometimes if we get asked, well, what kind of a memory? It's something that served you, that's been a really valuable lesson to you. So then we create a space of self-reflection for the person with their identified character to really reflect on these cards. And I think what I have neglected to say is that we use mindfulness and we teach mindfulness through this process. So we ask them, while they're with this character, to be aware, to observe what's going on in their body, to notice any sensations, notice anything that's shifted in the character that they're with, any changes in their position, their body, anything relating to, to things that they may observe, and then practice mindful breathing together with their character. And we will have taught mindful breathing in a previous session, okay? And basically that's just matching your breathing to that of the character that's next to you. So, if somebody chose a tree, they might say, oh, but how do I know that it's breathing? How do I match my breathing? And we're always open and we say, well, at some level, we may not be able to see that the tree is breathing, but we know that it's breathing. So as you stand there with the tree, whatever feels, wherever you feel that you're connected to the tree and you're breathing, and that's a space of mindful breathing for you. So now, essentially what the premise is that these areas are what inform us of our values. Because what if essentially our values? Values are things that are important to us and that they guide us in making decisions. Okay, and they guide us in the direction of making decisions that serve us and serve our relationships to others. All right, and so then we start to prioritize these values because we'll have done psychoeducation beforehand that values exist hierarchically, so you can order them in terms of what's important, but they also exist horizontally. So you can have more than one value that's important at a time simultaneously. And so now what we do is we prioritize them. So we go with the participant, we ask them to remove any of their blank cards. And then we ask them to select 5 cards that they don't want in their character's life, or they don't want in their own life anymore. Okay. And what I have discovered is that for some people that's very challenging and it's threatening. And I don't have it in the manual. But what has also worked is what we've said, okay, you may not want them out of your life, but you want less of them in your life. And so when we do that, and we take, and then we go, and then we create, each person chooses a location, which is like an out of life location or a less in life location. And then they go there and they put those cards in that space. And then they go back to their character. And then, so then we keep going with the prioritizing. We ask them now to choose another 4 cards that they want less of, and to move those and take those into their less in life location. And we keep going until they have got 5 cards remaining. Okay. And then when they've got their last 5 cards, we ask them to choose 2 cards that are particularly relevant right now, in this moment in life. And then with that, we ask them to look at those 2 cards, to read them, reflect on them, and to come up with one word that can be a representation of what's written on the card, and put that on the back of the card. And essentially, that's how we've come to prioritizing 2 values that are important in life right now. Okay. And then what we do is we ask the participants, okay, to work with the character, to decide on the right actions to get more of or less of, whichever is relevant, of those 2 values that they've chosen in their life. And then that's an experience that can look like many things. What it's looked like, I mean, what I've seen, it's been someone picking up a grasshopper and taking it and going and putting it in a tree. It's been standing with a horse and just moving with that horse in the rhythm that the horse is moving. It's been moving horses towards others, and then standing and then being and interacting and moving with them in that space. And for others, it's been more in a kind of a space of just observing, viewing what's happening. So we don't guide, we don't direct that at all. We just allow it to happen. And then after that experience, we've gone to the storyboard. Or we might process it, it depends, and being from that space of curiosity, what's happening with the story. But most of that my experience with this particular activity is that happens in the writer's room. When we look at the different characters, what are their roles, what are they doing, and then what were their values, and then in the different locations. So Ulla, did I answer your question, and what questions come forth from there?
Yes, thanks, Sharon. It's really great. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, I just put in there, I thought it was interesting that the way of focusing on what do you have the less of in your life, or want the less of in your life, and you're narrowing down the values that way. Was there a thought behind going that route instead of saying, pick the top 2 that's standing out to you right now, or something like that? What was the thought there?
Yeah, so the thought process around that is because all of these things have meaning and have significance. And so if you have to say, well, let's just have a look at these and pick the top 2, it can be overwhelming. It can be hard. And so when we're trying to work out what values are important, we are eliminating other values. And so that's why we use the process of let's eliminate, let's take the ones that we want less of. or the ones that are not necessarily relevant right now. Okay, and so you start to pick those out, and that helps us to bring the funnel, you know, narrower and narrower and narrower until we get to the 2. And and one of the things that's quite surprising. So, you know, some of the participants have said, you know, if you said to us just choose 2, we may not have chosen the same 2 that we ended up with when we went through this process of elimination. And then there are others who found it really hard, like really, really hard. It was like they said, I can't let these things go. These are important to me. And so that's where it's really important, I found, to recognize that. Yes, we're trying to highlight important values and how they function in life. And again, if there's too many, it's confusing. We know for us as human beings, if we have too many choices, we get immobilized. We don't know what to do. So this is a way of also helping us to narrow it down, that we can feel more empowered in terms of our awareness and not overwhelmed with this large, massive information. But I have had people who's like, I can't. I can't. Like, my career goal is really important. My child and my relationship with my child is really important. And going to church and my parents, they are all important, you know? And so I found it's not about saying, oh, you have to get to 2. It's like, okay, that's where you are right now. These are, remember, because these values can be horizontally. So these values are all important. They share a place.
Do you then encourage, after, you know, acknowledging that importance, to still pick up in this moment, it's still important, but less of in this very moment? Is that still something you would encourage?
I would go based on the needs of the participant. And for some, I would be, what, you know, are any of these more important at this moment in time than others, you know? And we might, you know, and so, and explore that. But if somebody is very like, I can't, these are all important, then I'm going to be respectful of that, because that's where they're at. It's their story. This is their story about about leading a life where they use their values to influence the decisions that they make. And so it's not for me to say, well, you can only have 2. But it's really more about the object of this is less about getting 2 and more about highlighting what's really, you know, those values that are really important at this moment in time. To remember that values are flexible and they are fluid, and so they might change. That's also an important message that we share about values.
Well, and I could see, I don't know if it kind of comes out where you're weaving that, continuing that on through the next sessions, because then those values become their own characters, and they might have different roles at different times. And that could be looked at about what values played a role in the story in this moment, in this experience.
Absolutely. So a value of a value of achievement, you know, that's a value that shows that, you know, that shows up as a character in other sessions. It shows up in people's stories. And it's amazing because once we've done this, that's why we brought it earlier into the format, because it seems that once people are aware of values and the role that they play, so these characters of values, it's amazing where they show up. You know, and because we started with when we do that's the storyboard, and we spoke about, you know, these are the characters, what are the roles of the characters. We also integrated what are the values. And I remember us as a team having a discussion when we talk about this, okay, there's roles of the characters, but there's also the value of the character. And so sometimes the value of the character is its contribution, but other times the value of the character is the values. And so we found that bringing onto the storyboard values as part of roles, or value S in the brackets, how that has also expanded some of the characters and and the integration of values into stories. Any other questions? I haven't really looked at the chat. I'm not sure if you.
Yeah, I mean, it's a different dimensions because, you know, what values are playing a role here? What values does the character have? And then you have what values does the character bring to the story itself? Like there's so many
Exactly.
different dimensions of values.
Yeah, I
exactly.
was thinking of sometimes we are not even aware of the characters in our story.
Mhm.
And now the values that character bring into the story, it's amazing. So it's it is another layer.
Yeah,
Very interesting. Thank you for
yeah,
sharing.
it's a pleasure. Yeah, I mean, values are guideposts to meaning, to our life. So, yeah. And what I found, I mean, one of the, I'm not sure where we are with time. I don't have a watch on me and my clock doesn't show up on my computer.
Oh, we have
screen.
like 15 minutes, Sharon.
Okay, yeah. So it's that we initially, so we do the storyboard and then we would leave time for people to write in their journals, to start to write their own stories. And a lot of people asked me if they could, they would think about it and then they wanted to do it at home and reflect on that. And we started to expand because we started out with, just write a story. It can be a short story, a long story, whatever story fits with you. And we had people asking me, okay, do we have to write a story? Can we write a poem? Can I write a song? Can I paint a picture? Can I draw a picture? And so I also it was an interesting exploration for me, because in my bias of storytelling is that it's in language, but it was a bias that I was not very aware of initially. And so through the participants saying, hey, yeah, we love this idea of storytelling, but can we do it in other mediums? Can we do it through different ways? And so that's why in the manual I actually speak about how, I say it can be a poem, it can be a story, it can be a song, it can be, it can be a drawing. And what we found is that once we became more open in terms of our request about, developing your own story, that people became so much more open to sharing their stories at the next session. And it wasn't initially, people were a little reluctant to share their stories, but once we started with this, it was amazing. And how they teach each other, they'd write a song and then we teach each other the song, and someone else would find the melody, and so we would almost becoming like a cappella, before we started our sessions and things like that. So it was it was really refreshing, actually.
So Sharon, I just have to say, I got a chuckle out of you saying you don't have a clock. You don't know what time it is, and there's a giant clock behind you on the wall that's been noon this whole time.
I know, but it doesn't work.
That just made me laugh.
As I should have said, I don't have a working clock. I have no idea of the time. And and I actually feel quite free with that. I'm like, you know what? Somebody will tell me when it's enough.
It's always lunchtime.
Lunchtime.
Because it's noon.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, for me, I think I would like it to be the time for second breakfast
Okay, gotcha.
or afternoon snacksies.
Oh my gosh,
So-
that just makes me think of it'd be so great to have a clock as a resource, a prop, just like what time do you want it to be? Like what role
Exactly.
that could play.
Yeah,
If you were to freeze in time, let's put that time.
yeah. So yeah, so I'm not sure what else to share with you. We've done things like taken the story titles, because we ask everybody to come up with a title for their own story, a working title for their own story, a working title for the session. And we've taken those and we've used those word clouds. And so then somebody's created a word cloud and shared that with everybody. So we've done things like that. It didn't do it with all the groups. It really depended on the group. Again, with us, it depends on accessibility to data. And so those who were not working, we didn't do word clouds with them because they would, it would be expensive for them to go and buy data, or otherwise they wouldn't get them. So we didn't do that. But others, we did, others we did lots of singing, lots of songwriting. And at the end, I'm trying to think of some of the stories that we've heard from our clients. So
I was gonna
yeah.
ask you, Sharon, if there was and a special like case story that is highlighting from you from this, but also like if there's anything that has surprised you, because you started off thinking you're going to use this other manual with logotherapy, then you started from scratch and started thinking more with the arch framework and the story mindset a little more. But is there anything through this journey that has surprised you and how the clients have responded to this, and any highlights that you can think of a case experience?
So what's been surprising to me has been how easy people relate to this. That was really surprising to me, because I really sweated, like, how do we introduce this? Like, what is that? And I think it's even probably been a theme with me in these community calls. It's like, how do we frame this? How do we take it to, and frame it and position it? And that was what was surprising to me, was how easy it was. And so you'll see that there are lots of questions in this. Like these are, because I came across how do you create premises for stories? And I came across the idea that we create a premise for story through asking a question. So using these existential questions, I thought, okay, then I can use the premise of questions. And then sometimes there seem to be so many, and then I would be, I don't know which one to choose. And what was surprising for me is that it doesn't matter. It's the right question comes out that, so that's why I left them all there. So it's not to say you need to ask all of these questions. It's one will emerge, but the framework of those questions was solid throughout. So that was really surprising for me, because I was like, I'm going to try out these story premise questions, and wow, they work. That was amazing. And just to be surprised, and always been surprised about how the stories that people tell and how they resonate with storytelling. So that was amazing for me. My other surprise, I think it's taken me a while to let go of, it's got to be horses. It's got to be horses. We're working with horses. We're going to have the horses up in the front. And it's taken me a while to say, okay, yes, horses and then what surprises me is how incredible we have all these other characters: grass, sand, grasshoppers, butterflies, a leaf, a fly, and yet they're all in the context of where the horses are. And so there's always some relationship that's happening between the horses and the people and all of these other characters. So yeah, I think that's my learning, is I've come to, there's horses and it's really hard for me writing up my my chapters because I have to focus on the horses, and I want to share about the sheep and the snake and the grasshopper and I want to share about all of these, and I have to just be like, no. Someone said to me, though, that's a postdoc, and I was like, no, that's not happening. That's definitely not happening. So yeah, so there's that, and a case story. I think of the case stories for me are the one is a woman that comes, there's two. So let me start. I'll start with the young man. So he started really quiet. It didn't say a word. And we didn't really know where he was. But he showed up at the first session, he showed up at the second session. And then at the third session, he started to speak. And he started to share his story. And he started to talk about the characters. And I was like, wow, like this is amazing. And at the end of the program, how he shared with us, he said, I never thought I could speak in front of people. I always thought I was very introverted. I was very unsure of people. He said, and I suddenly felt this thing inside of me. There's the character inside of me that can speak, that can interact with people. And I felt safe that I could try out this new character. And how he was then going to go and change at the end of the year when he had to make a decision about what his career path was going to be. And he was like, you know what? I think I'm going to look at a career path that involves more to do with people, rather than he'd been looking at things that were more kind of, sort of where he was in isolation and didn't have to interact with people. So that was an amazing story. And then the other story is, so remember, we're working in a non-clinical population. So I've not been looking at whether anybody, if there's any diagnosis of pathology or things. And we do say to people, if anything comes up for them, that, if they feel anxious or if they feel distressed by anything that's happened, that we would either organize a counseling session for them with one of the mental health professionals who are on the program, or refer them into one of the community programs that we were doing. And there was a woman who shared with us that she had a stroke. So she had a partial disability. She was in an abusive relationship with a man who she felt that was her destiny. And through going through this process of this, existential awakening, I want to call it, she was like, I can make different decisions. I can choose things differently. I value myself. I value my uniqueness. I value my worth, and I can make a different decision. And so she actually then went and she ended up reporting him to the police and moving out and creating, and I'm still in contact with her, and how she's creating a life for herself in terms of she's unemployed and looking at how she can have some kind of informal employment to make a contribution in the community. That's another story. And then I think a theme, because I'm busy with the themes of the interviews that I did, and one thing that's really standing out is how, because a lot of the people that I worked with in my research were unemployed, is how they became aware that they can use their talents and their strengths to help others. And so how, people would get involved, they'd either go and volunteer in a feeding scheme or in an early childhood development center, or went and knocked on the door of a neighbor down the road who they knew was elderly and didn't have many visitors. Just suddenly becoming aware that they can make a contribution in the world in their own way, and that it's valuable and it's important and changes their life and someone else's life.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, we just have only a couple minutes left. Our hour once again went so fast. This has been so enriching. Thank you for all the work you've done. This, you mentioned about you're still in the research stage. Any time frame on when the big paper will be revealed?
All right, so I've got to have a global accountability buddies. Here we go. My D-Day for submission is the 31st of August. So my dissertation has to be finished then. So,
Oh.
yeah.
Well, if you guys haven't, I know some of you have gotten it. If you want to check it out, when you log in, you can go, we have a store. You can click on store up here and we got a store and it's right here. And I'll put in the chat as well, the direct, but it's full of so much information, so many resources. And like the last 4 pages, I think, are references to support everything that's being presented in this. And I know I've already used this. I've put a couple proposals together now with kind of generically using some of this information and then using some of those references to support the evidence base of what I'm presenting in the proposal. So, I mean, Sharon's already done all this amazing work for us. And I think, like I said, it's such a good topic. Like everybody from a mental health, personal growth, finding meaning and thriving in life fits for pretty much everything. And I think this just creates such a neat template and a tool of a starting place if you want to create curriculums, if you want to create a more manualized program. I think this provides a very nice starting place. And I appreciate, Sharon, that you kind of put into action some of the mindset of story that we teach in art so that people can kind of see how it could be applied in different ways. And again, the possibilities are totally open, but it's just such an incredible resource with so many hours that you've put into it. So thank you for doing that and providing that for us. And is there any other thoughts or anything anybody would like to share before we wrap up today?
Well done, Sharon. Once again, well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, and thank you
wow.
guys. Thank you everybody for joining us. I forgot to look at what our next call is, but we actually have, sorry, stay tuned for what our next call is because I forgot, but it's going to be good. We have actually all sorts of exciting plans for upcoming community calls. So we look forward to seeing you guys then, as well as we'll keep you updated on the next book club and for the book. And if you guys have any thoughts on books you'd like us to put on our list, we'd love to hear. So otherwise, we look forward to seeing you at the next call. We look forward to seeing you at any in-person online events. And if you get the designation, we'll look forward to seeing you at future designation calls as well, where we're practicing with each other in those. So thank you guys and see you next time. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.